even if you had never met her, I think everyone felt like they knew Dame Deborah James, who sadly has passed away far too early at the age of 40. A 5-year battle, of course, with bowel cancer. An absolutely remarkable woman who fought right to the end to raise awareness of the condition. And, you know, our hearts this morning go out to her children, a 14-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter, and her husband, Sebastian, and her family, her parents, of course, as well. Absolutely dreadful news. But they added a message from Deborah on their announcement of her death. Find a life worth enjoying, take risks, love deeply, have no regrets, always, always have rebellious hope. And finally, check your poo. It could just save your life. And we're going to talk to Dr. Hilary in just a moment about her legacy and how important what she was brave enough to talk about, how important that is and what impact that has had on the diagnosis of bowel cancer. There she is. It is our main news this morning, the tributes which are pouring in for the cancer campaigner. She was also a blogger and, of course, a broadcaster, Dame Deborah James.
Yeah, she'd been receiving end-of-life care for bowel cancer and had raised millions for cancer research whilst documenting the realities of living with the disease on social media and through the podcast You, Me and the Big C. Nick Dixon joins us now from the Royal Marsden Hospital in London. Nick, this is not only where Dame Deborah was treated, but is also one of the beneficiaries of all the money she has raised through her Bowel Babe Fund. An extraordinary human being to be dealt with the card she was dealt with, but to get through it in the way she did and inspire so many and help so many others in her dying days is quite remarkable.
Yes, it really is. Morning to you both. As Susanna just touched on a moment or two ago, as we know at this point, she really was determined, particularly through social media, to try and share her story and her experiences, to try and help and support other people in the same situation. And that fund that you mentioned, as you say, it's raised millions and millions of pounds to raise awareness and help with research into cancer, well in excess of £6.5 million so far. And even in the short space of time since she sadly passed away last night, that figure has gone up by over £100,000. So it's an incredible legacy for her and her family in years to come. Here at the Royal Marsden Hospital, they will certainly benefit from that fund where she was treated and inspired so many.
Determined to find the positive in the most difficult of situations. As the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge put it, she captured the heart of the nation as she shared the highs and lows of her 5 years with bowel cancer. A statement posted by her family on Instagram announced that Dame Deborah James, the most amazing wife, daughter, sister and mummy, had passed away peacefully. Tributes have poured in from far and wide, including the Prime Minister and Radio 1 DJ Adele Roberts, who recently announced she's free from bowel cancer. Diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer at 35, she was given just an 8% chance of living for 5 years. With honesty and humour, the former deputy head teacher placed a spotlight on the UK's second deadliest cancer.
There's nothing pink about my cancer, it's just brown.
Through her BBC podcast, You, Me and the Big C, and the ITV No Buts campaign on Lorraine, she raised awareness of bowel cancer symptoms and encouraged people to get their symptoms checked. After announcing in early May that she was receiving end-of-life care at her parents' home, she lived her life fully, even as she was dying. In her final week, she continued to make memories with her family, raised millions of pounds to help others with cancer, received a damehood from Prince William, finished a chart-topping book, sales of which will go towards her Bowel Babe Cancer Fund, along with a T-shirt range as worn this week by Andy Murray's wife at Wimbledon, and a rose named in her honour. Wanting to make a positive difference right up until the end, in her last words, released by her family, she called on people to check their poo, find a life worth enjoying, take risks, love deeply, have no regrets, and always, always have rebellious hope. Her life may have been cut short, but her legacy lives on. Nick Dixon, Good Morning Britain.
Dr. Hilary is here. You worked very closely with Deborah, didn't you, Dr. Hilary? And, you know, you must feel this loss very...
She was a simply extraordinary woman. She really was. She had a zest for life, which was just incomparable. And she crammed into her short life what most people cram into 4 lifetimes. Her passion, her energy was extraordinary. And she always had a smile, and she used her sense of humour in a really engaging and positive way. She was determined not to let this cancer destroy her. In fact, she turned it round. She was always thinking of other people before herself, so family first. But also, she wanted to campaign to raise awareness of the symptoms, to make it clear to people that this wasn't just a disease of older people. She wanted to remove the stigma and embarrassment that held people back from going to talk to their doctor about things that they noticed about change in bowel habits. So she made it OK to talk about poo, about bottoms, about the No Buts campaign. And she did it with the most extraordinary verve, and she never stopped. We've heard what her final words were to people, saying rebellious hope and no regrets and love deeply. And this was how she lived her life. And her legacy is to help people to overcome those stigmata which stop them coming forward and getting that early diagnosis, because it's all about early diagnosis. She was universally loved, and, you know, I think the world will be a duller place without her, I really do.
Let's pick up on the final words of her statement, because, as you say, she reflects on the love of her family and how important it is to love deeply and live fully. And then the final line, she says, check your poo. It could just save your life. She doesn't want anybody else to go through what she went through. So, Dr. Hilary, to honour that this morning, what do people do when they check their poo? What are the signs that you should look out for?
Well, you're either an observer or you're a non-observer of what you produce. And if you're an observer, you live longer, because if you see that there is blood in the motions or mucus or anything different, if you have a change of bowel habit, if you've lost weight or you feel tired for no obvious explicable reason, if there's a lump in your tummy, don't ignore it. Don't assume it's something else. Go and talk to your doctor, get it investigated and sort it, because early diagnosis saves lives.
And that's the crux, isn't it? It's, if you see anything, just go and speak to your GP.
Go and check it out.
The earlier you get in, the most likely it could be absolutely fast.
It's probably not going to be cancer. It's probably going to be something much more insignificant, such as hemorrhoids. But never assume that. Too many people have lost their lives thinking that it's something trivial, where it's actually not. So I think her legacy will be saving lives. She was involved in scientific research herself in the trials that she was involved in and participated in. And she's raised millions of pounds, even in the last few weeks of her life.
To raise over £6 million, one person, with everything else going on. So it's just quite remarkable.
And it was partly because of her personality and her force of nature that enabled this to happen. People identified with her and they said, I want to help.
Dr. Hilary, the other thing that people get nervous about, apart from hearing that it's cancer, I mean, this is the irony sometimes of people being reluctant to go to the doctor with symptoms, is because they actually don't want to hear that it might be the thing that if they went about, they could prevent. But the other thing is testing. They're worried about what will happen once they go to the doctor. So once you've spotted perhaps the symptoms, what tests might you go through just to sort of, you know, make people feel comfortable about what they may face?
Well, the simplest screening test is already in place. The NHS sends out screening tests to people over a certain age for just looking at hidden blood in the motions.
So that'll be to test the stool sample.
So that's very easy. That's a straightforward test. That's not available to everybody. So there are less invasive tests than people imagine these days, which are far less uncomfortable than they imagine. So people shouldn't be frightened of the investigation investigations, they should be much more fearful of the potential consequences of not being investigated. So I would say to people, once they've been through the investigations, they feel absolutely, justified in having those tests and shouldn't have worried in the first place.
Early treatment would involve what? Surgery or radiotherapy? Or do you know what? I don't even know what the treatment is.
Well, sometimes it's a question of a polyp, a precancerous polyp being removed through a colonoscopy, through a little telescope that's inserted, and the polyp can be removed simply, non-invasively like that. Sometimes it's surgery, sometimes it's surgery plus other things like chemotherapy or radiotherapy. But, that's late-stage disease. If we get early-stage disease, we can make a huge difference and get a cure without, people worrying too much about the consequences of the treatment.
Get it early.
Yeah.
OK, thank you so much.
I have to say, there is just so many tributes to Dame Deborah on Twitter. I'm just going to read one of them. There are so many. I'll just read one of them. And this is from Vonnie on Twitter. It says, beautiful, beautiful lady. Her campaign has saved thousands of lives. Always educational, always fun. Deborah made checking your poo part of my hygiene care every day.
Brilliant.
And that's great. She's saving lives.
She absolutely will do,
Yeah.
and continue to do so. Our love to your family, Deborah, and thank you so much for everything that you did.